Hey, how you going? Welcome back to the TTP Field Manual podcast. Yes, we are back again. I'm Joshy. With me is...
Oh, were you expecting a I'm Jonny?
I was a little bit. I wanted to see what would happen.
Welcome. I was caught off guard by Josh's shenanigans.
You know what? You're not the only person in this episode who's going to be caught off guard by someone's shenanigans.
Oh. Is that a segue I see?
Maybe. You know what we're talking about today. Hey, Mr. Man.
I do, only because you told me like 10 minutes ago.
And like yesterday, last week, and a month ago.
Yeah. I was paying attention, obviously. No, we're going to talk about 500 worlds and what is it and what is it about?
What is it? What is it not? Who's in it? Who's not in it? Actually, if we're talking about who's not in it, we'll be here till tomorrow. So, 500 Worlds is, I suppose, the first installment of their sort of end of edition vibes campaigns and releases they like to put out, at least of the last few editions. 9th had Arcs of Omen, 8th had something. 500 Worlds is the first of those. It released as a very nice box set, a slipcase, I believe it's called. Inside were 4 books. One was basically a glorified pamphlet. We had a pretty meaty lore book, which is all lore with some pictures and some showcase. That is what we are covering today. They released another sort of rules for running a campaign. That's the one, the Vespator Front. That might be next, might be 2 videos from now. They released a boarding action supplement, Dread Incursions. That's also going to be one of our episodes. If we feel like it, we might do a small episode building some lists from the 500 World stuff. Maybe combine it with the upcoming Maelstrom stuff. We'll see. Exciting stuff, eh, Jonny?
It is exciting. Just to jump back to what you were saying just before, the 8th edition end of edition campaign was called Psychic Awakening, and it was 10 expansion books long.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was 7th, and I didn't want to say it was Psychic Awakening and then just be a wrong pansy. But yeah, that was crazy because they focus on like 2 factions at a time in that that Psychic Awakening campaign. It'd be like you versus you, you versus you. You versus you.
Yeah, I just thought I would throw that dog a bone.
Throw that Psychic Awakening and Enslaver. Uh-oh. 500 Worlds. We both were pretty excited by how they were doing this, having a few different little books that you can flip through for various purposes. It's really nice. It's really well done. I would say the only thing maybe a little bit sad is that it's rather limited. It's a limited release. Once it's gone, it's gone. And I'm not sure when this stuff would be available as like PDFs, if at all. So that's a little bit feels baddie. But the product itself is really cool. It's really well made. It has the same quality to it that the codices do, except that the books are softcover in a hardcover slipcase.
No, this is pretty exciting. I mean, when we really started our journey with 40k, it was towards the back end of 9th edition. Arcs of Omen was kind of just starting and happening when we were like talking a lot more about this, so we didn't really get as involved in what was happening at the time. So this is our first real, like, we know what we're talking about, end of edition excitement for us.
Absolutely. Isn't 500 Worlds old hat by now? Well, yes, but we are fresh. We do not get advanced copies of this stuff like other creators do. And then Australia had a supply chain issue for weeks. Following that, we weren't sure when this was coming out, so everything that has been coming out was recorded way in advance of this. But I like this. It kind of gives a second wind, I suppose, to this content. You know, everyone else has said their piece, now it's our turn.
Yeah. As you said, like, we do not get early copies. So you get this content when we get this content.
But hey, if you are excited to talk about this stuff a bit more in depth and whatever you're looking forward to in the future, whether it's Maelstrom, custom characters, or the upcoming Iron Warrior stuff, we have a link to our Discord in the bios of these episodes just after the description. Feel free to join in. We have work in progress tabs. We have general chats. We usually have a couple of chat forums running. It's early days, but it'd be great if you helped to populate it. Thank you.
Come say hi.
Come say hi. All right, Johnny. Opening spiel's over. It's 500 worlds time, baby.
So how many of these worlds are actually left?
Well, it's kind of a non-thing. Very early in the book says there's not actually 500. It's more of a phrase.
Yeah. I had a feeling you were going to say something along that lines. My real question is, was it originally 500? Back when the Ultramarines were in charge of this area of space.
From what I can recall, no. But if the heresy didn't happen, they would have likely gotten there quite quickly.
Okay. The heresy kind of ruined a lot for everyone.
Yeah. The Ultramarines were distracted, I suppose, by a Wordbearer's warp storm and were pretty much locked out of the majority of the heresy, even arriving at the Siege of Terra after the fact.
Good job, Lorgar.
Yeah, good job, Lorgar. The Ultramarines didn't end up losing too much of their forces. Like, they did lose a lot. The Wordbearer and World Eater Assault was devastating. But they didn't really lose their empire. And so, post-heresy, the realm of Ultramar was always a bit of a thing. It still was there. But shortly after the heresy and the siege, there was the scouring. In, I think, Millennia 31, Fulgrim ambushed Guilliman and put him into a permanent coma. And so very early on, there was no Guilliman. And Guilliman was the mastermind behind the whole realm of Ultramar, Second Imperium vibes. And over time, because we've had new threats like Nids and Necrons, and to a much lesser extent, factions like the Tau, the 500 Worlds has more or less slipped in its power. 500 Worlds was never an accurate number, but in the 41st going second millennium, it really isn't 500 Worlds anymore.
Yep.
For the most part, it's actually more so the Macragge system and a few outlying strongholds. And then the rest of the 500 Worlds, the realm of Ultramar, I feel like, Johnny, it's a microscopic version of the galaxy. You have, in this book, what's known as the 4 fronts that are spreading out from Macragge. And each of those fronts have a bajillion things to go and deal with. Everything that you can expect in the larger galaxy is likely impacting the 500 Worlds. You've got Nids coming through. You've got Necrons waking up. You've got Chaos tearing things apart. You've got Orcs that are just hanging out here and there. Like, everything elsewhere is also here. And so this is like a small galaxy conflict, it feels like.
Very localized.
That's the word.
Even though everyone is here.
So to sort of set the stage of when this book is happening, it's shortly after the whole Great Rift thing. Time is a little bit effy-weffy because of the Great Rift, really distorting space-time. Guilliman is still out doing his Indominus Crusade stuff. He is out basically trying to wrangle the disparate elements of humanity back into a cohesive whole following the Great Rift and the whole Goodnight Astronomicon elements of the lore.
Goodnight Astronomicon.
Yeah, if you're on the other side of the rift, you cannot really see the Astronomicon. So everyone in the Galactic North is essentially in the Badlands.
Yeah.
So the Blood Angels, the Dark Angels, they're a bit in the Badlands. It's really dangerous out there, and there's a lot of not so good things happening.
Yeah, it's hard without support, right?
Johnny, what conflicts can you recall having affected the realm of Ultramar in recent years?
Oh man, are you asking me lore questions like I know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I'm seeing if you know what's up.
Not a clue.
Okay. No worries. So, back to the beginning. 500 Worlds opens with a bit of a summary, I suppose, of all the various Ultramarine stuff. We have mentions of the Plague Wars, which was when Mortarion and Nurgle forces tried to corrupt the realm of Ultramar post Great Rift. This was so devastating that Guilliman had to come home for a bit and go and fight himself, Mortarion. It was really rough. He actually technically died, if not for the Emperor rezzing him.
Daddy's always looking out for his boys.
Yeah, it must be really hard being Bobby G. You wake up, you're the last one left except for all of your other brothers who are evil. And then you go home, Daddy E is so not there anymore that he can't even hold a conversation with you. You're not sure if he hates you or loves you or what is going on inside his head. And then when you go off to fight Mortarion, who's messing up your home, the Emperor's like, no worries, my son. I'll bring you back to life. And you're like, oh, he does love me after all. Great. Besides that, the realm of Ultramar was the first contact of the whole Tyrannid swarms, so there was a lot of devastation from that. So there's a lot of devastation from Nurgle, Tyrannids, and now come the 500 worlds. It's not the Pariah Nexus, Johnny, but there are Tomb Worlds waking up everywhere.
Here there be Necrons.
Here there do be Necrons. And so Guilliman, he's having a logistical migraine, and he's like, how do I do everything? I cannot do everything. Oh, wait, I have a bunch of sons that can do everything. All right, so everyone, chop, chop. He sends out his Vox signals. He says, we begin the Reclamation, the Ultramarian Reclamation. And what he's basically done is put out this huge decree of like, Ultramarines, chill the F out. Focus on our home turf first, all right? Okay, great. And so he has looked across the various zones of Ultramar. He's identified the main flanks, the key areas that needs focus and support, and he did something that not a lot of Imperium governors were pleased about. Any ideas?
Mate, what isn't Guilliman doing that people aren't happy with? I imagine they're not happy because he pulled back all his forces to consolidate, right?
Yeah, that's definitely part of it, but there are 4 fronts, as I mentioned.
Yep.
The Vespator Front, the Protoss Front, the Andamung Front, and the Konor Front. He has reinstated a position of power known as the Tetrarch. So there are now 4 Tetrarchs, each one being responsible for one of the 4 fronts. These fellows are essentially a step above governor, but they are Space Marines.
Oh, he put Space Marines in charge.
Yeah, because as much as he does like humans and he's all for helping the Imperium, there's only so much that a human brain can wrangle, right? And so he has said, we're going to unify Ultramar. It's a little bit disparate. There's a few sort of separate Imperial kingdoms rising up and a few sectors and planets that are sort of slinging it out by themselves. We want everyone to become a cohesive whole again because we cannot do another Plague Wars. We will lose. We are spread thin. So the Tetrarchs are back. He's made his Ultramarines' first captain, Agaman, who is definitely that Leviathan Terminator captain guy. It's him.
Oh, yeah.
He just doesn't have a data sheet. Yeah. Look up Captain Agaman, his old model, and tell me they didn't just make him again for Leviathan, but didn't give him a data sheet.
I definitely butchered his name, I won't lie.
Age Man.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. No, I see it. Oh, he did change hands.
Oh.
He now...
Sorry.
He swapped which hand his power sword is in.
I'm so sorry. My bad. I'm going to retire. All right, I'm out.
Can't be the same guy, right? He's not left-handed anymore.
Far out, man.
I get you. I'm just teasing.
I know. So he's got him in charge of the Konor front, and we'll circle back around to how the 4 fronts are going a bit later in the episode. But he has Captain Decimus Felix. Yawn, in charge of the Vespator Front.
Yep.
Decimus Felix is the new captain on the block from, I believe, the Dawn of Fire series. But I've seen him in a few books, and I don't really care.
And I don't really care.
I don't really care. But my headcanon as of this morning is that because his name is Decimus Felix, it's actually that Reaver operative in the Space Marine 2 game who's like super edgy.
Oh, yeah. Isn't that just the lieutenant with Combi Bolter nowadays?
No, it's just a Reaver. It's just the Vanguard guy, but he's a Reaver.
Okay.
But his name's Decimus. When he talks in the game, it's like Decimus speaking, yeah? And so I'm just headcanoning that the edgy Vanguard guy is in charge of the whole front.
That would be crazy.
Brother, what needs grappling?
What needs grappling?
I've been saying magazine out, magazine in. Anytime I pick up a magazine this week, and it's kind of a problem. I should slow down with that game.
Well, good thing you're not subscribed to the Warhammer magazines, eh?
Not yet. So besides them, there is Chapter Master of the Doom Eagles.
The who now?
Yeah, right. We're going to get into that in a sec. So the Doom Eagles is another chapter of the Ultramarines' successors. They're in charge of the Protoss front. And Captain Portan of the Genesis chapter, yet another Ultramarine successor, is in charge of another one.
Okay.
If you type up Genesis chapter into Google, you get a lot of Bible stuff. You need to clarify it's Warhammer that you want.
I can imagine why that might be the case.
Yep. So we got 4 Tetrarchs. We're reclaiming Ultramar. We need even more help, Jonny. Guilliman has also came up with the Shield chapters.
Okay.
The reason why I feel as if Ultramar is a microscopic version of the Imperium is because there are 10 Shield chapters. These are chapters whose whole purpose is to solidify Ultramar itself, be Vanguard forces, support forces, and just be the main chapters of this region of space. Because even though it's Ultramar, the Ultramarines are Codex adherent, and they don't have that many dudes for 500 worlds.
Because there's not 500 worlds, Josh.
Yes, you're right. But I believe in Mr. Guilliman, and he'll get there again. I'm sure of it. In 14th edition, he'll secure them all.
14th edition?
Wait, what number is Ultramarines in the Legion? Are they?
They're 13.
All right, 13th edition, Ultramarines Codex.
Josh, I shouldn't know that.
The fact that you got it before me is wild.
I only know because TikTok sent me a video earlier today.
No.
And they were like specifically mentioning that Ultramarines took the number 13 from being such a bad luck number to being, the Ultramarines.
Sure, all right.
I was like, suck up.
So the Ultramarines are, of course, one of the Shield chapters, but in this lore tome, they basically are framed to be the sons of Asian parents. Guilliman has such high expectations of them that they are spreading themselves thin to keep up with Guilliman's demands, but they're standing there like, I'm just a guy. We're just a few guys. We can't do it all. But yes, we can, because we're the Ultramarines. And so they are being described as so determined in the face of pretty much impossible commands that they are starting to be a little bit more sacrificial. They are starting to disregard humanity a little bit so that they can actually achieve their very demanding objectives. And so the Ultramarines are becoming just super elite, super overworked, and are striving to be a bit more than the common Astartes because they got to live up to Dad's expectations.
Yeah.
But there's 9 other chapters, and they are all successors of the Ultramarine gene stock. We have the Reborn. The Reborn are a new Ultima founding chapter, which was when the Primaris reinforcements were all sort of chopped up and turned into new chapters.
Yep.
So the Reborn are a completely Primaris chapter who are focused on mechanized spearheads and tanks and armored warfare, Who does that sound like?
Man, they really did just do a mini everyone, right?
Yep, the Reborn's icon is the Ultramarines logo upside down, but with a skull in the middle.
Oh, I was going to say, if it had a fist in the middle, I would have laughed so hard.
Do any of these have fists? No, but there are a few birds. So, number 3 in the book are the size of the Emperor.
We'll skip over them. We don't care.
They are the anti-Xenos people. Moving on. All they're really there for is fighting off Xenos, according to this one paragraph.
They're the new hotness, but their color scheme is downright awful, in my opinion.
Very cool idea behind them. You know, scything the various fields of Ultramar against the threats. But yeah, what's up with their paint scheme? We have the Silver Skulls, which, if you look up the Silver Skulls, they look a little Iron Warriors like in their iconography.
The Silver Skulls.
Yep. These fellows are viewed as quite barbarian-like. They are a little bit tribal-esque. They commit headhunting practices. They listen to the omens of their librarians.
Excuse me?
Yep. You're looking at it now.
What do you mean that's not an Iron Warriors emblem?
I guess their chin is a bit wider, eh?
They're literally Oh man, there's even a picture of one that's got like a black shoulder with yellow squad markings, and I almost thought it was Hazard Stripes.
Mm-hmm.
That is not No, that's not okay. You can't steal my boys.
It's okay. The Reborn do armored warfare, Johnny. The Silver Skull's all about effective, savage, close quarter, and siege warfare.
They were
It specifies siege warfare.
They were like, oh, the Iron Warriors didn't accept us, so we went to the Ultramarines.
Oh, Guilliman's like, you know what? Before they were a bunch of traitorous swine, they were really good at their job, eh?
Oh no, it's more like we didn't get into the frat we wanted, so we turned the frat we got into what we wanted. Crazy.
This next one is less crazy, but definitely the funniest one to me. The Avenging Sons.
Oh, I've heard of these guys.
Oh, have you?
Yeah. Are they white and blue, if I remember correct?
Yep.
Yeah, I have heard of these guys.
The Avenging Sons were the final chapter made in the Ultima founding. They embody whatever cold and terrifying anger of their Primarch means, but they're very much like anti-heretics.
That might be why I know who they are.
You want to know what the Avenging Sons battle cry is?
Oh yeah, what?
We are his vengeance.
Oh, that hurts my soul.
Yeah. So, the 6 of the Shield chapters is actually one of the very first chapters of Space Marines I ever learned about in all of my hobbying years, the Sons of Aurora. But they don't have much lore. They look a little Heresy Era Thousand Suns to me with their scheme, a red with white.
Oh yeah. Are they psychers?
Well, no. But what they are is a chapter of predominantly close quarter strikes and stealth operations and Vanguard moving.
So I heard you like Raven Guard. How'd you like Raven Guard but Ultramarines?
Yeah. Following them, they have the Nova Marines as part of the chapter. The Nova Marines are one of those really hard to paint 4-quadrant color schemes.
Oh, yep.
They are supposedly an extremely efficient and effective fighting force, but if you're a Space Marine, are you not already?
I mean, that's kind of their point, right?
Yeah, they are a fleet-based chapter, which means they are essentially the security guards of Ultramar. They're just moving around, looking out for problems, and backing up problematic areas. We have the Praetors of Ultramar, which are a black and gold scheme. They are an interesting one. Tell me if this reminds you of anything. They undertake the sanctioned study of other chapters' strategies and tactics, seeking broader context by which to best understand and implement the teachings of the, in brackets, Codex Astartes.
Interesting.
They are studying everybody else.
Yep.
Seems a little Alpha Legion to me.
It definitely does.
These next ones are quite fun. We have the Doom Eagles. This is one of those Tetrarch chapters. The Doom Eagles are one of the OG successor chapters of the Ultramarines. The Doom Eagles have a really funny logo where it's the Imperial Aquila, but instead of the two bird heads, it's a skull. The Doom Eagles are a jump pack assault force, primarily speaking, and they accept that they'll likely die eventually. And so they're a pretty somber and morbid bunch. They're very macabre, and they just fight to the death. But because they've accepted the fact they'll probably die, they fight a little bit better.
Because they got nothing to lose, right?
So they're Blood Angels, right?
Oh, yeah, and they like to use dreadnoughts.
So they're Blood Angels, right?
Yeah. They're blue angels. Oh, they're not even blue, they're silver.
We're obviously being a bit hyperbolic here, everybody, but it's kind of funny when your small bit of lore makes you think of a completely different chapter, right?
I mean, that's Ultramarines for you, right? Stealing the glory off everyone. Just like model releases.
Right. This next one I find really fun. The Aqualoan Brotherhood.
The Aqualoan Brotherhood. Oh, that looks like a frat house logo.
Yeah, but their logo is the Imperial Aquila, but with the Ultramarine symbol in the middle.
Yep.
These guys are described as exhibiting heightened zeal and detestation for what they perceive as deviant faiths, be it chaos, xenocults, or even misguided forms of veneration towards G-Man. They display a delight in the use of flame weapons and heavy firepower against such practitioners to the extent that other SHIELD chapters do not really like them, because several brutal massacres have been attributed to this chapter since the Ultramarian Reclamation, blamed in on part because they refuse to use human diplomacy.
They refuse to use human diplomacy.
They basically believe, like, hey, you've heard of the Ultramarines, right? Yeah, so are you with us or against us? Turns on the flamethrower. I like them a lot, actually. That's the kind of unhinged crazy I'm here for.
It's giving frat house.
Yeah, with a big poster of G-Man on the bathroom wall.
Oh, yeah. It'd be a poster of the Emperor with G-Man's head.
True. That's true. So that's SHIELD chapters and a bit of the Tetrarchs. How are you feeling about the Ultramarian Reclamation so far?
It's a very Ultramarines. When do we get to the good stuff?
You mean the Necrons? Eventually.
Okay, cool. So the Ultramarines are attempting to reclaim their homelands after every other faction decided they wanted a piece of the pie.
Basically. But before we get into Necron lore, they had to give us a few pages on Mr. Demetrian Titus.
Of course. He's the guy that got the bad job, right?
He had a few bad jobs in his life. There's in the book a bit of an standing obituary in a side paragraph to one Sevastus Akaran, previous second company captain, guy who talks to you a lot in the Space Marine 2 game.
Yeah, the ginger dude, right?
The ginger dude, yep. The Scottish Phobos guy.
I like that guy. He's cool. He's the guy that turns around to you and says, nah, you can have 3 dudes.
You can have 3 dudes. And it's probably 3 dudes that cost him his life because he's not here anymore.
Oh, did he die?
He dead. He died in the side paragraph.
Oh, he didn't even get like an on-screen death. He died off-screen.
He had that unfortunate fate. But he did go out like a baller. So he and what was his name? Chiron, the other Titus squad mate fellow in the Space Marine 2 game.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so Chiron and Akaran were sent to investigate a hive city that was a little bit sus. When they get to the hive city, they realize the entire thing is completely infiltrated and sabotaged by gene stealer cults. And rather than let that out into the wider world, they fight their way to the part of the city which activates an atomic defense system, which basically seals the Hive City shut in the face of nuclear war. So no one gets out, no one gets in, and that's it. They fight to the death. But the Gene Stealer cults cannot really get out, and then boom.
So they keep the GSC in and blow up the planet.
Something like that. They don't blow up the planet, but they definitely...
They nuke the planet.
Probably. But that's pretty noble. Next time, die on screen, okay? Okay.
Make sure the camera's turned on.
And then Titus gets his old job back because he used to be the second company captain. In Space Marine 1, he was the second company captain, I believe, or thereabouts. And then the Inquisition was like, hold on a sec. And then he comes back into the second company as a lieutenant after his Death Watch time. Then everyone's like, hang on a second, this guy's a bit sus. And then Akaran died. And then everyone's like, well, he's kind of the best we've got. And so this is after Space Marine 2. This is after the Secret Level episode. And Titus is now in charge of the whole second company. He also inherits the Codex chapter title of Master of the Watch, which is the second company position, which essentially means, hey, you're in charge of border patrol.
Oof.
So Mr. Titus now is in control of basically securing the various borders of Ultramar against threats, which we've already established is lots.
Lots and lots.
Lots and lots. He has Mr. Calgar in Defiler's tick of approval. Calgar really likes this guy, even if other people aren't so hot on him. Calgar's like, nah, he gets shit done. But Titus can't do things alone, Jonny. He's got Wardens.
Yeah, these guys slap hard.
He's got 6 friends. He has Ancient Gadriel from Space Marine 2.
He got an upgrade.
He basically keeps passing his battle shock tests, and that really inspires everyone around him. And so Titus was like, hey, do you want to hold a flag all day?
Too bad. You get to anyway.
That's about it for him. Veteran Sergeant Matarus from Secret Level. I swear he died in that episode, but I obviously wasn't watching it well. But he's here. He actually was the fellow who taught Titus how to be a Titus and is essentially his wise old council guy.
So if Titus is Chad, this guy is Giga Chad.
Yeah, he's the old warm uncle who has all the wisdom, but he's also exceptionally capable of fighting. So he's there. We then have the Humans, which I'm not entirely sure why they all get deployed to the battlefield, considering that the first one starts off as being a Commodore in the Void Fleets. Why is he on the battlefield then?
Yeah, right. And running around with Space Marines.
Right. Gaia Silva is one of the best naval commanders in the whole Battlefleet Ultima, which is the Ultramar side of things. He is apparently very, very good at essentially unifying the Astartes and human elements of the fleet. Astartes like, human fleet, we need you to go over here and defend this flank. And they're like, we can't do that. Guys will be like, yes, you can. Here's how you do it. You will do it. For Ultramar.
For Ultramar.
So he has his own flagship, the Magnificence Enthroned, which is really nice of a name. He is basically coordinating with various shipmasters for orbital bombardments, and yeah. Why is he on the battlefield? I don't know. This next chick is pretty cool. Amelia Minervus. She is an extremely high up defense auxiliary individual. She is extremely skilled at organizing everyone. She herself has completely memorized and can quote verse by verse the Codex Astartes and has actually adopted its various teachings into how she organizes the defense auxiliary. So you have human Ultramarines now.
So why isn't she an Ultramarine then?
She's just a woman, and as they say in Space King, whatever it's called, no girls.
Wow, Josh.
Jonny,
wow.
Did you listen to the implants episode yet? We very explicitly said the genes say
no girls.
No girls. It's key to male hormones or something like that.
I'm so glad they fixed that for the Custodes.
Yeah, right. Amelia is there. She's doing well. This next fellow is quite fun. Denau Cornelius, the guy who gives Psyker to the unit.
This guy's creepy.
He's very creepy. He actually served within the Fortress Monastery of the Ultramarines before Titus was like, I need you, actually. Come with me. He is so skilled at sending astropathic messages. He is the guy. But because he spends all day poking his brain through the warp, he has become very dark humored, and he is basically shooketh by the horrors of the warp. So he's very hard to get along with, and no one really likes him because he's just a little unhinged. But I mean, you try and be an astropath.
Yeah, I feel bad for psychers the more I read books, eh?
But this fellow, it literally says he has been accused of unbecoming conduct and disrespect towards Ultramarines and high-ranking military officers alike. Captain Titus shields him from the political fallout of such incidents. It's like, why are you having a problem with the messenger boy?
Don't shoot the messenger.
Sure, he's a douchebag, but I mean, is his being rude really yucking your yum?
I mean, from what I gather, the messenger often gets shot when it comes to astropathic messages.
For sure.
Because I know that even in the most recent book club that we did, there was a scene where the messenger was like, I am terrified to take this where I need to take this.
Poor fellow.
I don't want to die.
So, we then have the last of the Wardens, Lucia Vesta. And she is a little bit terrifying, if you ask me. She is a negotiator. She is a diplomat, and that's scary enough as it is. But she is so good at that job that Guilliman himself has given her his seal of approval for doing things.
Good on you, girl.
A mere human brain has Guilliman's authority in the art of diplomacy. She is able to completely turn a world over to them without needing fighting of any variety. And so Titus, he's pretty stretched thin. He's really just there with his other fellows to go to war when diplomacy is not an option because she's on it. But besides that, that's the groundwork of this various conflict. That's the groundwork. That's the opening third or so of the book. The rest of it isn't as filled with information. It's more of the play-by-play of a very particular conflict. But we haven't been introduced just yet to our antagonist, Jonny.
Yes.
Neck yourself, guy.
Hey, isn't that commander?
Magic Commander, neck yourself, yeah. So, how do you like destroyers, Jonny?
I actually think they're pretty sick. Although I have some trauma from 9th edition.
You're about to have some trauma in the Colosseum later today. Sorry.
Are you bringing Nekrosor?
No, he's an epic.
Ah, true. Okay, I'm safe.
True.
I'm not safe.
True. So, the Nekrosor Ammentar is the big antagonist of this particular lore chunk. Now that we've been told all about the groundwork of the setting, the book really just focuses in on one component of this whole Retramarian, far out, Ultramarian Reclamation. We focus on really one part of it through the eyes of Mr. Titus. But Nekrosor Ammentar is the villain behind the scenes.
And a sick bloody model, like holy.
So cool. Nekrosor Ammentar has a quote in this book that I think really sets up his role in everything. And it's the most metal bloody thing I've heard in a long time. And I listen to a lot of metal.
Yeah, you do. Gun.
Death is meaning. Death is purpose. Death is divinity. And I am its priest.
Is that not just such a metal bloody quote?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Death is divinity and I am its priest.
I mean, if you look at his model, that's a lot. That's a lot of stabby bits.
He is one of the only Destroyer Cult affiliated Necrons that has lucidity of thought. At times, he's definitely lost in the source, and everyone around him is essentially triggered by that in a bit of an aura vibe. But in between all those moments, he's able to actually think and talk and be diplomatic. Part of his diplomacy is strong-arming various cryptex into augmenting him further. He's got the Ophidian lower serpentine body. He's got various hexmark little pistoleros. He's got the hallmark Scorpec bladed limbs. He flies around as if he's a locust.
Does he fly?
Yeah, he flies.
Oh, I thought he, like, millipeted
Skidded.
his way across the ground.
Does he have the fly keyword?
He does not. He doesn't fly.
Well,
You
he
lied
definitely
to me.
flies in the book.
Nah, you lied to me. He skitters. He's a big old wormy boy. I see those little legs. I don't know if you've seen his little legs, but they're adorable.
They're pretty cute.
In a very stabby way.
Nekrosor Ammentar, Nekrosor being a sort of honorific that doesn't really have an explanation. It's unknown if he had a different name or various identity or even from which dynasty he came from. Only the Silent King is believed to actually know of his origins, which I've got a headcanon.
Go on. I'm always here for a Silent King headcanon.
Nekrosor Ammentar is so lucid of thought that he knows why he's doing what he's doing. He is basically strong-arming tomb worlds into his service. His mere presence and his little cabal of followers essentially override the awakening protocols of tomb worlds so that they are static and dysfunctional. His cryptex and such then mutilate various individuals throughout the tomb worlds into more just destroyer bodies, flayed bodies, vehicles themselves turn into a frenzy of warfare, all with the purpose.
I think I know where you're going with this.
Yeah, all for the purpose of unlocking the various fragments of the Nightbringer and setting him free upon the galaxy to eradicate all life in a anti-Necron, anti-life doom spiral. But who he is where my headcanon is, and where do you think I'm going with this?
He is a Catan shard.
Ah, that is not where I was going with it.
No? I thought you were going to say he's either a shard or possessed of a shard of the Hive, or whatever they're called.
I'm fairly certain he really is informed by the shards of the Nightbringer. It's implied that he's able to sort of feel the presence and be inspired by the Nightbringer. But I find his sort of anti-Necron rhetoric, the whole no one knows where he came from except maybe the Silent King. I have a headcanon, and nothing that I've read suggests that it's not possible. But I wouldn't be surprised to learn that Ammentar is the Silent King's hidden son.
Son?
Yeah, like a child of the Silent King that was like, man, this is all horrible. I'm going to bring it all down.
Or agent. Maybe just agent.
Maybe agent. I think it's definitely a stretch, but I think it could be quite neat that the boogeyman of the Necron dynasties is maybe a family member or perhaps long-lost agent, as you point out, of the Silent King. That could be quite something.
Yeah. Interesting.
So Ammentar is not alone. He has a bunch of disciples and generals that are collectively referred to as the Oblivion Court.
That is a sick name.
Right. He has fellows such as, what's his name? Nesfetra the Flayer, a Scorpec Lord. He has various strategic masterminds such as Nekrosor Ammentar, who has resisted the Destroyer madness and is essentially his right hand. she's able to coerce various elements of their overall armada whilst remaining relatively sane herself.
Yep.
And there are various cryptics that form a cabal known as the Hyper-Unk Conclave.
Hyper-Unk Conclave.
Absolutely. And so we don't get too much about what they've done, but we get a lot of sort of awareness of it. But as I said before, they really are into the whole sort of mutilate tomb worlds, turn reanimation protocols against itself, corrupt all the various infantry, essentially brainwash into the destroyer cult the various nobility of tomb worlds. They are forcibly waking up. It's Necron zombies.
Necron zombies. Aren't Necron zombies?
Well, they're undead, but this is like really zombie-like.
I thought that's just what flayed ones were.
Well, it's funny you mentioned flayed ones. I was just about to let you know how Nekrosor and his legion actually employ flayed ones.
I would want to hope that they use them. I imagine this guy has access to the Flayerverse.
More or less, he basically baits them onto worlds that he knows are dormant tomb worlds, will basically begin a conflict of such overwhelming aggression that it's bloody, it's messy, it's visceral, and so the flayed ones are like, oh, yummy, and arrive from wherever they come. But in such force, because there's so much death and destruction, that it's enough to essentially signal the tomb worlds into a panic, like, uh-oh, there's a corruption happening. We need to wake up and we need to protect ourselves against the flayed curse. Well, would you look at that? You're waking up? How about we corrupt the entire tomb world mid-awakening?
That doesn't sound very good for anyone who's coming out of a nap.
No. There is things that says the glyph of the Nekrosor, the mark of the Nekrosor, is bared upon living bodies, having obliterated former dynastic glyphs, or summon it into glitching holographic constructs. Other representations are etched into the flanks of war engines or gouged into the walls of subjugated tomb complexes. It's very bad. It's very bad for Necrons. But that's essentially the cliff notes of Mr. Ammentar and his forces. The bulk of this story time actually covers what's known as the War for Novamagnor. This is the first appearance of Mr. Nekrosor Ammentar. It is Titus and friends coming across that in dealing with it. And throughout there's heaps of like little logs and tidbits and side bits, but we don't have all day. How it all starts. Titus and his friends are called to the world of Idaris as splinters of the Tyranid Hive Fleet are still poking their way through. Titus and his friends actually fly their battleships inside the Hive ships and blow it up from the inside out, which I think is pretty baller.
Yep.
But Titus is like, where are they coming from? Which direction? And so his various astropaths and librarians are like, oh, they just completely bypassed this huge imperial world, Novamagnor. And Titus is like, they bypassed it? Yeah, Titus, they went around it. He's like, oh no. They avoided a planet. That can only mean one thing, says my Death Watch experience.
Oh,
it's
no.
a tomb world. Which is what Nids do. They avoid tomb worlds because there's something about tomb worlds that makes them go, nah, we don't want that one.
It's probably something to do with their like anti-warp tech or the fact that Necrons don't really bleed.
Titus and all of his mates go full tilt towards the world of Novamagnor. And they find, oh, look at that, a tomb world's waking up and the beleaguered forces are struggling.
Yeah, no surprises there.
As they arrive, there is a tomb ship in orbit that's trying to flee. Titus and his mates are like, oi, get him. But the tomb ship isn't even engaging. It's still fleeing. Titus and his mates board the craft, fight their way through, kill the noble in charge of the ship, and there's a strange Pokeball object, Johnny, a strange Pokeball object in the bridge of the ship that was trying to flee the planet.
No, there isn't.
There's a little Pokeball. Well, not an actual Pokeball, obviously.
No,
A little Pokeball.
Is our boy there? Is he?
So Titus is like, I don't trust this. It's a Xenos relic, and goes to destroy it. His somewhat ally of convenience, Archmagos Controvertant Oct. Say that 10 times fast.
That's a hell of a name.
Big Archmagos character says, hold on, whoa. If you destroy that, you might blow yourselves up in the process, and you might trigger a whole Necron chain reaction. We don't know how lethal this is. And Titus is like, I hate AdMech, but fine, whatever. I'll go with you. You know technology better than I. Here you go. And gives him the object. What is it? And Oct is like, oh, it's a weapon, Captain Titus. It's a weapon that we need to keep out of their hands. And Titus is like, yep, good idea. Still don't really trust you, but I got more pressing matters. He and his various wardens are like bickering over what to do. Titus is very much like, I appreciate everything all of you are saying, but we have to act now. And I'll just say very early on that this book does the Space Marine cardinal sin of every other paragraph is all about how cool and badass they are. They fight with Astartes discipline. They fight beyond the exhaustion levels of normal humans. They fight for their Primarch who stirs the zeal in their heart, that kind of crap.
Yeah.
But for every paragraph of that, there's definitely one that's moving the plot forward, and it's kind of fun. And so they've dealt with the tomb ship, they hop onto the planet, and there are various tomb complexes poking their way out of the planet. But there's not a whole lot of Necrons, Johnny.
Where are the Necrons?
Yeah, where are the Necrons? He meets up with the planet governor, and the governor's like, oh, it's not great. Some of these tomb complexes have essentially pushed out of the earth and have destroyed various cities and installations. Like, we can't do anything about that. But, like, where there's not a tomb complex, we're okay. And Titus like, well, sometimes Necrons have summoning sickness, and we can go and deal with this ahead of time. So he and his little company and some AdMech dudes go to walk a big old bomb into the main tomb complex.
Yep.
They do so, and all the Necrons are like turned off, suspended animation. They're just like chilling as statues. And it's huge. The whole tomb complex inside is described as being so massive that you can't even see the ceiling. The whole central chamber is larger than the entire Space Marine battle barge.
Nice.
But what could possibly happen when they go to put the bomb down?
They forget to arm it. That would suck.
Oh, far out. AdMech are many things. Good at turning on bombs is
definitely one of them.
The chapter is titled Onslaught.
Okay, so they remembered to turn it on.
They remember to turn it on, but they are in the middle of the tomb complex, at the very heart. And then from all these dimensional oubliettes, it's a cool word.
I love that word.
A bunch of destroyers just flood the zone. There are essentially Scorpec destroyers and Ophidians tunneling out of seemingly nowhere. There are locusts descending from the misty ceiling that you couldn't see up into because it's so high, and they're just essentially locusts bombarding them.
Mm-hmm.
Tech priests are getting slaughtered. The bomb is left behind. Titus and his bros had to do a fighting retreat because there is a strange, unique, like hulking destroyer fellow that has also emerged from all of this. His mere presence turns on this evil, crazy, erratic energy in all of the slumbering Necrons that they walked past on the way in.
That doesn't sound good.
They are being ambushed by the antagonist.
Welcome, Nekrosor Ammentar.
And Titus knows that whatever this guy is bad news. This ain't your typical Saturday morning Necron. This is something new and fierce. And so he orders a retreat, and they lose so many people on the way out because there's just so many Necrons that are all just coming back together. It doesn't matter if you hack them in half, they're still clawing after you, zombie-like. Ultramarines L.
Yeah, they're like, we need to get the hell out.
We need to get out of here. Now, throughout the War for Novamagnor, bifold spreads are peppered in between the chapters to explain what's going on the various fronts. The first one focuses on the Conor front of Captain Guilliman, and these various spreads have lots of little excerpts, lots of little Vox communications, and then a bit of a brief about what's happening here. It's basically pushed that Guilliman has got a brain to really mimic that of Guilliman. He has plans upon plans. He is so extremely layered with his plans that various elements of the plan are keyed to the timing of the likely success of other plans. Go here and take this spaceport. But why do we need the spaceport for? Like, because simultaneously someone else is going to take over a ship that's lost in orbit. But what if they don't do it? It's like, no, they will.
Yeah, don't worry. They'll do it.
And so there's heaps of these synergy plans that this guy is doing, and everyone around him's like, I don't get it. How is he doing this? How is he planning this well? But he's first captain.
That's what he does.
Now, how are you enjoying lore time so far, Jonny?
It's been good fun. It's always nice to see what is happening in the greater universe of these conflicts, and I've been pretty keen on seeing what happened between these Ultramarines and Necrons.
After the whole Guilliman bifold, we continue with the onslaught. Here's a paragraph or two that really explains what I was talking about. Titus could see well enough that the situation was far beyond initial projections. He knew the Codex would have him pull his precious forces back. Space Marines were not created to hold ground. Nevertheless, he was the master of the watch, the defender of Ultramar. If he abandoned them now, what message does that send? He's calling out for allies. He needs to protect the 500 worlds. You're like, I get it. I played the game. I get it. I read a Space Marine book before. I get it. But I guess you have to pad story.
Yeah.
And throughout the whole Titus v Necrons conflict, there is more of these sidebars about what that Archmagos fellow's doing. Well, howdy, Jonny. What do you think old Tech Priest is doing with the Pokeball?
Trying to open it.
Absolutely.
That's what Tech Priests do. They touch things they're not meant to touch.
Mm-hmm. Why would a Tech Priest be potentially touching this Pokeball, though? What would he want from such a thing?
Whatever's inside.
What if I told you that Mr. Archmagos Oct is part of the cult of the dragon? Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
There's a shard in there.
He believes that he has a Tesseract Vault imprisoning a Void Dragon shard, and so he is doing everything he can to praise this extension of the Omnissiah.
So, at this point, does this confirm a little bit of the whole who the Void Dragon might be sort of vibes? Like, is that actually canonically plausible?
It is canonically plausible, but how they portray it is that it makes various Tech Priests seem like cultists believing a particular creed that isn't yet 100p confirmed. Like, Archmagos believes that the dragon is
Void
the
Dragon.
Omnissiah.
Okay, alright. That's the part I wanted was...
Or like an angel of the Omnissiah, you know?
Yeah, okay, cool. So even some of the admechs believe this.
Yeah.
It's not just us.
Correct. But we go back to Mr. Titus. Titus manages to retreat. They all get onto the Thunderhawks. He has a staring match with the Nekrosor, who's just standing at the entrance to the tomb like, yeah, come at me, bro. And then Titus is like, I vow to slay the Xenos beast. Good on ya. Good luck.
As he does.
And so they retreat. They go back to the planetary governor. Their city known as First Brand. Rearm. heal up, get ready for the next move. But it's at this point that all the Tomb Worlds are waking up for good this time, for realsies. From the perspective of the Nekrosor, he is in the tomb with his various cabals. The Cryptex are mutilating awakening Necron forces and essentially grafting on bladed limbs, turning them into makeshift destroyers. The flayed one's already here, slopping up the leftover Marines in Tech Priest flesh, and it's described that the flesh is steaming out from within them as they begin to quote-unquote digest it. It's not good.
Sounds terrible.
With that said, that Nekrosor character is here, and she is basically in charge of this dimensional gate that is drawing in a lot of their actual forces from the last Tomb World they subjugated. The Tomb Worlds have this sort of gate between each other that the various Oblivion Court members use to travel from one place to the next as this flood of destroyer madness. And so there is a gate, a dimensional gate, under the surface of this Novamagnor planet that the Nekrosor in charge is essentially coercing through into this world, while the various Cryptex are subjugating this Tomb World, and then the Nekrosor Ammentar is just spreading that contagion of madness everywhere. It's not good.
No, it really ain't.
Really ain't. On top of that, there's various reports coming in from across the planet of flanks been overturned by these strange, wispy, robed figures wielding large scythes. Multiple of these reports. I don't know who they're possibly talking about.
I guess we will find out, correct?
You know what I'm talking about.
I know.
It's heavily implied that there are many shards of the Nightbringer upon this planet just popping up and going boop. There's a story of a Space Marine company fighting. Nightbringer pops up and then just scythes through the whole tank and then looks at the various defense auxiliae and just gazes of death them into dust. Just like that, instantly. And then everyone's like, how the fuck are we gonna do something about all this? This is impossible.
I mean, it's a literal god that's just shown up, right?
And so Titus is like, we have to turn on that bomb. We have no choice. We have to blow all of this up.
What other choice is there?
As he is trying to get all of his forces together, he's called in help. The Archmagos is doing things. We can have a side story about Captain Portan of the Genesis chapter and what he's up to, which is basically he's got the Chaos Front. I believe this is like the Cursed Tetra, where you take over a world and then months later it falls again because it's chaos. There's a few Nurgle warbands running around. Orcs are just hanging out for some reason. A couple of little tidbits I really like is that here's a little excerpt. The envoys of Ultramar had done their work ahead of us. They had calmed tempers, instigated processes, established institutions and standards worthy of Macragge. It was the Tetrarch himself, Captain Portan of the Genesis, who saw through the lies. He and his counselors, steeped in the Primarch's wisdom, prefects of the Primarch's ordinances, beheld that which would have fooled lesser generals. The first envoy died at Portan's own hands, and the apothecaries dug into their mind to expose the taint. Cerebral repatterning, hypnagogic induction, empiric enslavement, these and more had the mark of the heretic vipers, the Alpha Legion.
Damn straight.
Damn straight. Local months were spent uprooting and burning out this nest of treachery. A system-wide cordon caught many mortal agents trying to escape, but the Tetrarch knew far more still lurked. Battle brothers, auxiliae, arbitrators, and others were his eyes and ears, executioners and interrogators. There were cells hidden amongst the political elite. There were military agents within the militias. There were cult demagogues wearing the robes of ministorum, scribes and clerks, surveyors and lawmakers, each unmasked, each fought to kill, Each spat curses of heresy or cried out that their sins were forced upon them. In all of this, the heretics' transhuman masters remained unseen. Damn.
Damn, girl.
Damn, girl. Alpha Legion, eh? They're not even here.
Alpha Legion is so cool.
And yet they're so embedded.
Yeah, they're so cool.
Another aspect in this is that there's a negotiator who is trying to essentially shift this planet into compliance, except it's going to take like a long time, like generations of diplomacy. And so the negotiator explains in his email that he has basically got a conclave of rejuvenate adepts, basically people that reduce aging. And he says that he will submit in full, even if he has to conclude negotiations with their children's children. Imagine you're committing to a diplomacy that's going to take 3 generations to accomplish, and you're the one doing it.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
That's really cool, but I don't want that job.
Oh, no. Not at all. Not for a second.
So, yeah, that's the Protoss front. It's a bit chaos in there.
That's what I like to see.
Following that, we get more of the perspective of the Nekrosor side of things. Here is a bit of an excerpt. Nekrosor Ammentar suggested the ambush that just happened earlier before. It was at her direction that Uz-Shemek's tomb complex, which is this world, was rendered temporarily quiescent, the awakening of its legions unnaturally suspended. At the same time, Ammentar's host drew back through the dimensional gateways to the vaults of Mashnok, there to await signal to attack. Meanwhile, expendable formations of lesser faithful were sent to apply pressure to outflung holdings across the planet, building where possible on the initial sorties made by Haskatef's vanguard. The humans would all have to die eventually, for no life could be allowed to endure. If their deaths could be employed as a spur to goad the true enemy into incautious aggression, then so much the better. Where is the quote about the mutilation? That was a very descriptive thing. I'll see if I can find it real quick. But how are you enjoying how this war's going?
I mean, so far it seems like a pretty big L for the Imperium, so I'm pretty happy about that.
Oh, here we go. Here's something. I don't know if it's all of it, but it's something. Charnel horror filled Uz-Shemek's tomb complex in the wake of the Ultramarines' escape. Living metal claws dug into iron-hard bone and wet meat slopped, steaming through android innards as the flayed ones feasted on the fallen Space Marines. Cryptex crooned with mad delight as their canoptic servants continued to dismember the hapless forms of the lower orders and forcibly transform them into unliving weapons. The corrupted master program aped their efforts on a far greater scale, ripping slumbering Necrons into wakefulness without care, the damage done to their personality engrams, and wreaking grotesque alterations upon their bodies, even as they thrashed and emitted distorted screams within the confines of their crypts. It was a supernatural carrion drumbeat, a percussion of infernal insanity, to which Nekrosor Ammentar twitched and writhed in increasingly violent sympathy. The prophet's vocalizations rang out in time with the throb of madness, though its words clotted like gore and tumbled into one another until all sense was lost. The meaning behind them was inescapable, as a Gorod shard would wait no longer. Subtlety and cunning were of no further use. Ammentar would lead an overwhelming force against the human's fastness. It would not stop its attack until its shard was released from the vault, and every organic life form capable of resisting lay dead. Damn!
Damn, girl.
Damn, girl. As you can sort of imagine, things start to ramp up a bit. The Ultramarines get their reinforcements and get ready to go back into the tomb, of which they do, and fighting through a sheer mass of Necrons. Ammentar fellow does go and attack the first brand stronghold, and it's not even a challenge for him. He is described as basically being a murderous pinball. He's there, then he's there, then he's here, then he's there, and everything on the way is dead.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
When he gets to Archmagos Oct realizes by now that it's not the Void Dragon at all. It's not the dragon that he wants. And all the Necrons are here. There's this really fun description where as the Imperium forces are overran because the AdMech had been rendered into a state of non-decision, like they're so stunned by their failings that they actually don't have any direction from the Archmagos, and so they're just sort of standing there as they're being killed, to the point where even like Skitarii marshals are trying really, really hard to override their command codes or lack thereof to rally some of their forces, but it's just too late. And as the Nekrosor arrives into the Tech Priest's shrine, all of his forces are just still. They are waiting for the Nekrosor's direction. Ammentar hovers over to, he scooters over to the Tech Priest, who at this point is just a mess. He basically hands the Tesseract Vault to Ammentar and says, "Let me help you open this." Because he still wants to believe it's the Void Dragon. And Ammentar, it's described that he's like gentle. He moves his very clawed, gory gauntlet over the Archmagos like a caress before, in an instant, crushes him in his claw and just yeets him behind himself into a waiting mob of flayed ones. And so as the Archmagos is screaming and crying out, and all the Imperium forces are being slaughtered outside, including the planetary governor and her lone Baneblade.
Her lone Baneblade.
Of which it's described that Ammentar himself cut through at some point on his way up to the shrine.
Just cuts through a Baneblade.
Yeah, just goes over there and just slices through it, cuts it open, then goes inside and murders everyone.
Man, this dude.
But yeah, he opens the Tesseract Vault, and inside is another shard of the Nightbringer, of which I think this makes 3 or 4 on this planet alone that are active. And then we get to essentially the death knell. So there's just living metal, flashing blades, arcing energies going all over the main city. This is the final Vox diary of the planetary governor. For years I watched from these windows as First Brand grew. We planted our hopes in soil made fertile by faith. We watered them with honest blood and nurtured them with toil. This city, throne, this entire world was the result. Years of effort, millions of lives, all to offer something to the Emperor we could be proud of. Now I stand at these same windows and watch it wither in a single day. Death has come, and all our hopes, faith, and toil are ashes on the wind.
Damn, these quotes are so sick.
Right? But even like the various paragraphs are really well done. The actual battle I just described of First Brand has a lot of pages to it, actually, of how all the various fighting's going on. Oh, sorry. It wasn't Ammentar that went into the tank. It was that Scorpec Lord. It says he's sprang onto the tank's hull and carved his way inside. The resultant bloodshed spelled the end of the fight for the Ark of Imperial Magnificence, which is a place, and the collapse of Obstinus Bastion's outer fortifications. As the governor took up her blade and prepared to lead the final stand, Ammentar turned aside, sweeping around to the north of the bastion. It instead led its legions in a ferocious assault upon the forged shrine of the divine Cog. Stranger still, the Skitarii maniples and servitor clades garrisoning the mighty structure responded with seeming confusion and lethargy. And then the rest of what I described happens. And it's really well done.
Yeah, you can't complain about the lore when it comes to 40k. They're so on point with it all.
Back into Mr. Titus's perspective, he brought Tech Marines with him this time instead of Tech Priests. So Nemesa Anhutek resisted her prophet's call. She remained within the pillar chamber at the tomb's heart, continuing to direct the incoming reinforcements as long as her willpower held out. Naturally, Titus and his mates got there. He had some dreadnoughts with him. It was just a real gushy fight. And so Titus vaults the android and smashes his blade into her energy reef war scythe. They fight, and it's very neck and neck. He eventually does send his snarling chainsword up through her body, bursting, smoking, and churning between her shoulders. The Nemesaur slumped, her body glowing with witchlight and becoming ghostly before phasing away to her far distant reanimation sarcophagus. So she's not gone.
Of course not.
And it's described in the aftermath that after the bomb is triggered, technically they've won in the sense that the planet's not lost. A lot of forces are still alive, if just not the main city. But the whole tomb complex was annihilated by the vortex bomb. Imperial battle lines that were on the verge of collapse are now steadied because the Necrons were no longer with their murderous aggression. Because somehow, the Nekrosor Ammentar and all his dudes were just gone. They had disappeared.
They just up and left.
They just went.
That's scarier than a lot of other things, right? You don't want them to die.
This was the side paragraph to sort of close up the Ammentar bit. With another shard of its god secured, Ammentar departed Ujemik, which is the actual Necron name of the planet again. The Necrosaurus was a crusade on the grandest scale. It might wish to lose itself forever in the cold perfection of slaughter. Yet, as lucidity returned after the obstinate bastion's fall, so too did perspective. Ammentar needed to murder all organic life everywhere in the galaxy. Only a god of death could bestow such a gift. Any lesser being, even undying Necrons, might as well attempt to drain an ocean with a thimble as eradicate every last trace of the biological contaminants which profanes the stars. Alone amongst destroyers, the Necrosaur recognized this and retained the vision and reason to act upon the knowledge. Thus, leaving a portion of its forces to continue the eradication, Ammentar departed via a lesser, transspatial nexus within a deep-buried tomb annex near the planet's southern pole. With it went the shards of its god, the morbid nobles of its oblivion court, and enough destroyers and co-opted soldiery to see its will done. As Agorod's whispers permeated Ammentar's cortex and drew it ever onward, so the horror began again on another world.
That's so cool.
And that's like the closing thing of this whole conflict. Technically, the Imperium survived, but they didn't really win.
I feel like that's a big L.
Something that you'll find quite interesting, though, is that at some point, there are members of the Necrons that are kind of against all of what's going on, that have a little bit of a fight back. Not the very good one, but Titus himself manages, or I don't know if it's Titus, there's a lot of information in this book, but somebody manages to realize that the resistance to Ammentar is both Zarakan and Saltek. They are fighting together against this, which is Zarek's and Ematek's dynasties.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, well, we have a larger threat.
Bigger problems.
And except for the two fronts that I've yet to gloss upon, that is pretty much the War for Novamagnor. It's a very straightforward conflict, I suppose, but it introduces a whole new character and a whole new angle of threat within the Necrons, which I think was really cool.
Yeah, it is sick. Really nice.
To give a brief description of the other two fronts, they're less interesting to me, but cool nonetheless. We have the Protoss front, which is the Doom Eagles chapter's job. They are sort of positioned as an extreme advancing force to the point where the human forces quite literally cannot keep up. They are fighting with such extreme fervence that they are securing fronts of the war, and then eventually the humans come in to support and supply. But by that time, the Doom Eagles have already moved on, and it's just an extremely locked down front. But then the other front is the Vespator Front, which is led by Felix of the Ultramarines. Now, this one is like the busiest flank. It's got the most stuff happening. There is such things as orc pirate kingdoms. You heard me.
Yep.
But because there are so many different forces, Felix's strategy is to commit overwhelming power to certain conflicts. And then once the enemy is crippled, fall back and do it again somewhere else. Because he can't spread his forces enough. There's too many zones of conflict. And so he's just snowballing his way around and hoping the crippling of his enemies is going to eventually turn the tide. But there is one That's something that is just awful. It is a horrifying description. Here we go. So this is a Vox thing or a communication that is going on in one of the hive cities in this front. So someone is being interrogated in prison, and it cuts in and says, "Don't ask me again how many. No, I'm all right. I was transgressing. The militias are easy to avoid if you know how." And that's where they were. That's where I saw them. The Shamblers and the others. The ones Lillian called the Peelers. No matter how many times you ask, I still don't know what they are. But I know what the Shamblers had been. They were Jawardines, people, labourers, militia, transitiers, criminals. I recognize some I've parlayed with, but they were wrong. Dead but not dead, bloated, broken, pox-ridden, oozing pus and oil and blood and I don't know what else. The light in their eyes, you know the fungal gripe, how it glows? Their eyes were all like that. Everywhere they went, everything they touched, Geralt and Tamas included, the change, God Emperor, the change. But the Peelers were worse. We were running from the Shamblers when Lillian saw them. Thought they were other victims, but then they moved. Red rags over rusting, creaking skeletons of metal, like spindled servitors without the meat. Saskia was first. They caught her, tore her, peeled her while she screamed. Beta was next. Only Lillian and I got away, but then the Shamblers after us crashed into the Peelers. I was hidden, but I heard thumps, twisting metal, the slop of liquid. When I looked, they were tearing each other apart, dismembering, slicing, but not a whisper came from either of them. Death and decay at each other's throats. I'll never forget the God Emperor how I wish I could.
That is such a disgusting description of Flayed Ones.
Yeah, going into Nurgle, like it's Poxwalkers versus Flayed Ones. Then in the next page in the showcase, they expand upon it because the showcase is Poxwalkers versus Flayed Ones, and the description of the image says, you know, when the governors of this hive city finally found out what was happening in their lower hive, it was too late. Like, oh.
Oh no,
Oh,
it
no.
was too late.
Except for the very, very last page. That is all of the lore stuff in an hour and a half for this book. What you think? What were your favorite bits?
Why'd you leave out the last page?
No, well, I'll mention it after this. What did you really like about this? What was some of your favorite parts? What do you think about the new Necron? The whole Ultramarian
Man, they turned him
thing?
into a total badass.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I think it was a very interesting conflict. As I said, it's always nice to see a small L from the Imperium, even though we know that they'll come back and win the day. But no, it feels very well set up, very well done. I'm pretty happy with what they did. I just wish there was something more than Ultramarines going on. I loved the AdMech dude just being like, but that could be my god. And he obviously messes with stuff he shouldn't mess with, and things go terribly.
It's really fun. I was quite impressed with various descriptions. I was kind of a little shocked that it was like one world. Well, technically two. They covered 2 worlds in the whole 500 worlds thing. But anyway.
I mean, it's the initial conflict, right? Obviously, we're going to see what else is going on in further novels, but this was really just like the warm-up.
Yeah. If you don't like Ultramarines, 500 worlds is not quite really for you, but it's a setting for other forces to take the stage as well. We just needed some more Titus love, because we don't get Titus love enough.
Yeah, they also had to give him reason to be there, right?
But speaking of someone being there, the very, very last page, at the very end of the book, is a strange sort of email going out across the warp. It has an incredibly long-winded back and forth of security, clearance, and advisory effects and cogitation mathematics, only for it to say clearance signifier ident, LION EL'JONSON, Primarch, Dark Angels, cogitating. Transcript is, brother, we need to talk. Which, if that's all you're saying, you could maybe say where you are, eh? But he sends that
Right.
to Guilliman. And so they'll probably meet up at some point soon.
Which is the first time they've met up since LION returned to the setting.
Yeah, the LION returning to the setting is like the very end of the timeline.
Yeah.
Essentially like concurrent to what's happening right now, the 500 world stuff.
Yeah, so it'll be good to see him like show up and us finally see that initial interaction between brothers who used to hate each other but are kind of like, well, at least I've got a friend, right? At least someone lived.
Yeah, they just sort of have that like wistful, I'm not alone. Yay.
But it had to be you of all people, didn't it?
Well, in the Heresy era, apparently LION doesn't really like Guilliman all that much, finds a bit of a goody two-shoes.
Yeah, right? That's what I mean. And now it's like, oh, of all the ones.
Then I'm not quite sure if it's the Arcs of Omen or his LION novel, but the LION's basically humbled by life and is grateful to learn that Guilliman's alive. So, yay. Brotherly love.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's it. We'll leave the data sheets for another episode. This is long enough.
It sure is.
Sure is. There's a lot to cover with these sort of things, but like to put it into perspective, this lore book with pictures and stuff included as well, it's like 80 pages, and the majority of that is words and graphs of fronts and little side passages. It's really packed, despite what I said about
to see.
all the Space Marine machoisms. Yeah, I think we should wrap this up, eh?
All right. Well, that was honestly very good, and I'm glad that we went through it. So thank you so much for putting in that research and time and discussing it with us.
Thanks. You're welcome. Take us home, Johnny boy.
For those others out there doing things and stuff, come say hi on the Discord. And we'll see you next week. We'll probably be discussing the boarding actions potentially, and maybe touching on those data sheets as well to finish this off.
Yeah, talk about the campaign system as well.
Yeah, so enjoy a couple of episodes of content focusing around 500 Worlds as we await the release of the next
Yep.
one, which would be Maelstrom. So we're just as hyped as you guys probably are as well. And we're going to keep covering this stuff, as we said in the start of the video, as we can get our hands on it. But thank you so much, and we will see you next time.
Peace out.
Bye for now.